My dad told me to cancel my wedding for my spoiled brother, so I chose myself instead and made sure they had no place in the life I was building. My name's Mark. I'm 33. I proposed to my fiancée Haley last spring on the pier where we had our first date. We'd been together for almost 5 years, and she'd stood by me through some brutal chapters: job loss, family chaos, health scares. She was my safe place. So when she said yes, I felt like everything had finally clicked into place. We planned a small, elegant ceremony at a vineyard about 40 minutes outside the city. Haley's family was supportive, sweet, and involved, but not overbearing. Mine, on the other hand, well, let's just say subtlety and grace were never in their vocabulary. The first crack in the wall came barely a month after we sent out save the dates. I got a call from my mom, her voice tight and passive-aggressive in that way only she had. Perfected. "Sweetheart," she said, drawing the word out like she was already exhausted by whatever came next. "Do you really think a wedding in May is the best idea?" I paused. "Why wouldn't it be?" There was a bead of silence before she sighed. The kind of sigh that let me know I was about to be guilt-tripped into something absurd. "It's just that, well, your brother's graduation is in early June, and you know how sensitive he is about people stealing his thunder. My brother Tyler is 25, the golden boy, the one who somehow turned being average at everything into a full-blown identity. People were expected to applaud. He changed college majors 5 times, failed out of 2 different universities, and finally earned a degree in communications and lifestyle branding from a school I had to Google to confirm was real. Despite all that, my parents still acted like he was the next Steve Jobs. Every family dinner revolved around Tyler's latest minor, achievement. Ty got a job interview today. Ty's starting a podcast. Ty's moving back into focus on his mental clarity. And now apparently my wedding was a threat to his moment. I tried to be diplomatic. "Mom, the wedding's been planned for months. And it's not like we scheduled it during his graduation. It's literally 4 weeks earlier, but that didn't matter." She gently, then not so gently, suggested we push the date back to July. "It would just show that you care about your brother's feelings." She said he's been working so hard. I bit my tongue. Working hard? Tyler hadn't held a job longer than 6 months. Meanwhile, Haley and I were budgeting every dime, working overtime, juggling venue bookings, family schedules, and a mortgage. But sure, let's cancel everything for the fragile ego of the guy who once cried because our cousin beat him in Mario Kart. I told her we weren't moving the date. That's when the cold front truly set in. Calls dropped from daily to once a week. My dad didn't return my texts. My younger cousin, who I'd always been close with, suddenly said she couldn't be a bridesmaid because things were weird with the family. And then came the dinner. It was supposed to be a calm Sunday meal at my parents' house, a tradition that had limped along since I moved out. Haley and I showed up with a bottle of wine and polite smiles. Tyler was already there, lounging on the couch like he owned the place, wearing sunglasses indoors and scrolling through TikTok like he was allergic to eye contact. My mom ushered us into the kitchen and immediately started in with a syrupy tone. "Mark, honey, your father and I were talking, and we think it might just be better for everyone if you postpone the wedding until next year." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. "Ty's really been struggling lately," she continued. "He needs support right now, not a big distraction. And your wedding. It's a lot. A lot of what I asked, still trying to keep my voice level. A lot of attention." My dad cut in, suddenly appearing in the doorway. "Look, son, you've had your moments. Now it's your brother's turn. Be a team player." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were seriously asking me to cancel the most important day of my life. Not just reschedule, but cancel because my brother was apparently too emotionally fragile to exist in a world where something wasn't about him. Haley squeezed my hand under the table. I glanced at her and she didn't need to say anything. Her eyes said everything. She was tired of trying to be gracious to people who saw her as an inconvenience, tired of bending herself into a smile while being treated like an outsider. That night, we sat in our car for a long time after we left their house. I stared at the dashboard. Fingers gripped the steering wheel, white-knuckled. "Are we really going to do this?" I asked. "No," Haley said quietly. "You don't deserve that. We don't deserve that." And just like that, the idea began to take root. Not canceling our wedding, canceling them. Not in some dramatic, scream-filled fight, but quietly, surgically. If they wanted to make this a war over attention, fine. But I was done playing the loyal son while being treated like a supporting character in Tyler's ego parade. The next day, I started making calls, not to change the date, to change the guest list. I called the venue and asked how we could adjust for a smaller group. I emailed our caterer. I took a long walk with Haley and we went through the guest list with a highlighter and a bottle of wine, crossing off names like we were performing a long overdue exorcism. When the new invites went out, my phone lit up like a slot machine, text calls, passive-aggressive emails. My mom sent a 5-paragraph message titled, "Deeply Hurt," that began with, "I hope you're proud of what you've done to this family," and ended with, "Your brother is in tears." I didn't reply. Then came the message from Tyler. "I can't believe you would do this to me," he wrote. "You've always been jealous, but this is a new low. Don't expect me to show up when your life falls apart." I showed the text to Haley. She didn't laugh. She just nodded and said, "Good. Let them be exactly who they are." But the real meltdown, the one that made it all worth it, came a few days later, and it happened in a way I didn't expect. It was a Wednesday. I'd just gotten home from work and was halfway through making dinner when I heard pounding on the front door. Not knocking, full-on pounding like someone was trying to break in with their fists. Haley looked up from the couch, eyes wide. I opened the door, and there stood my mother-dad, right behind her, and Tyler sulking in the car parked crooked across our driveway like he couldn't even be bothered to pretend he wasn't sulking. "Mark," my mother snapped, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "What is wrong with you?" I shut the door slowly, turning to face them. "Good evening to you too. Don't play games," she spat. "Your father and I just found out from your Aunt Debbie's Facebook that the invitations were updated. You uninvited your own family." Haley stood now, arms crossed, silent but alert behind me. I kept my tone calm. "Yes, I did." She blinked. "You what?" "I uninvited the people who made it clear they don't support our relationship, our wedding, or our choices. That includes the people who told me to cancel my wedding so my brother could feel special about graduating college 7 years late." My dad stepped forward, shoulders tense. "You're being childish." "No, I said I was being childish every time I let you guilt me into sacrificing for Tyler. Every time I let you ignore Haley. Every time I let you rewrite family events to fit his ego. I'm 33 years old, and this is the first time in my life I've made a boundary with you. And look how fast you came running to smash it." That shut them up for a second. Then my mom laughed. Actually laughed. "So this is her," she sneered, gesturing to Haley. "This is the influence. I knew it. I knew she was turning you against us. You used to be such a good son. I used to be a doormat. I said, not anymore. You owe this family." My dad growled. "We put you through school." "No," I said, sharper now. "You took out a loan and reminded me every year that I was lucky you didn't make me pay it back. Meanwhile, I paid Tyler's credit card bill 3 times without a thank you. I helped cover your mortgage when Dad was out of work. I co-signed that lease for your second car. Do you remember any of that?" They stared at me blank-faced. "I do," I said. "So if we're talking about debts, yours are overdue." That's when Tyler finally got out of the car. He stormed up the driveway, arms waving like some minor celebrity denied entry to a nightclub. "This is all because of your ego," he shouted. "You think you're better than me? I think I don't have to prove anything to you anymore," I said. "Everyone says you're selfish," he snapped. "Mom and Dad are ashamed." "Great," I said. "Then I guess we finally agree on something. You should all go." My mom gasped like I'd just struck her. "You're kicking us out." "No," I said. "I'm asking you to leave. You'll know if you're ever actually kicked out. There's still a difference for now." They didn't move. "I'm not going to stand here and argue." I added, "We're done. We've made our decision. If you want to be part of our lives, it won't be on your terms anymore." Haley stepped forward now, her voice calm and firm. "You're not the victims here, but you can choose to stop being villains." That was the final straw. My mom turned red-mouthed, twitching eyes glossy with angry tears. She whirled around and marched back to the car. My dad followed, muttering something about ungratefulness. Tyler lingered for a moment. "You'll regret this," he muttered. "Maybe," I said, "but not today." Then he left. The silence afterward was deafening and beautiful. Haley exhaled slowly and wrapped her arms around me. "I'm sorry it had to happen like that," she said. "I'm not," I replied. "I'm just sorry it took me this long." But of course, that wasn't the end. 3 days later, the emails began. Not from my parents, but from extended family aunts, uncles, cousins. Some were polite, others furious. A few offered constructive criticism that was really just veiled insults about my emotional immaturity or wedding entitlement. One cousin I hadn't spoken to in years told me that family is about forgiveness, not cancellation. Another sent me a Bible quote. Cute. Then came the real kicker. My mother posted a cryptic status online. It read, "Sometimes the children you raise turn into strangers. We'll be attending a graduation instead of a wedding this year. Pray for our broken hearts." It was followed by a crying emoji and a family photo from 10 years ago. Me included, like I was some long-lost soul. The comments rolled in. I saw people I grew up with, church friends, neighbors, family friends, all chiming in with condolences, outraged sympathy. You were the best parents. Some kids just forget who raised them. Prayers for healing, blah, blah, blah. I didn't comment. I didn't even screenshot it. I just blocked her. And then something unexpected happened. Haley's mom forwarded me a text. Apparently, my dad had reached out to her behind my back, asking if there was any way to talk sense into Mark and if they still had time to fix this before he destroys the family. She replied with one sentence, "He's not destroying anything, he's finally rebuilding." But the real turning point, the moment I knew I was past the point of no return, was when I got a call from the vineyard. Apparently, someone had called and tried to impersonate me, saying the wedding was canceled and asking for a full refund. They gave my mother's name, stood there phone in hand in stunned silence. I should have been angry, and I was, but more than anything, I felt a strange kind of peace, like a fog had finally lifted. They weren't going to stop, not because they cared, but because they couldn't stand the idea of losing control. I called the venue back. I confirmed everything was still on. Then I called my lawyer. The lawyer's name was Dana Chin, sharp, pragmatic, and no nonsense, the kind of person who didn't blink when I told her the full story. I'd met her once through a friend during a work dispute, and even then, she'd left an impression. When I explained everything, the pressure, the harassment, the impersonation attempt with the venue, she didn't flinch. "They impersonated you over the phone?" she asked, fingers flying across her keyboard. "Yeah," I said. "The venue flagged it because the caller didn't know the deposit amount or Haley's last name. They asked weird questions, too. Like if the guest list had changed, someone was fishing for info." Dana looked up. "That's not just petty family drama, that's fraud. If they tried to cancel a legally binding contract in your name, you could have been out thousands." "Can we do anything?" I asked. She smirked. "Oh, we can do a lot. That's how the Candace letters were born. Not out of anger, not really. They were a shield, legal, cold, and final. One letter to each of them. My parents, Tyler, and the two aunts who'd been most vocal online. The message was clear: stop interfering or face consequences. Dana made sure it was airtight. Impersonation, harassment, defamation. She even included a polite but firm reminder that any further tampering with our wedding would be documented. Haley and I mailed them out together, hand-delivered at the post office. There was a strange sense of closure in dropping those envelopes in the slot, like saying, "You wanted a reaction, this is it." But the quiet didn't last. It never does with people like that. About a week later, my cousin Ellie, one of the few sane members of the family, sent me a voice note. "Hey Mark, just a heads up. Your mom was crying at church today. Said you'd gone full legal on the family and were threatening lawsuits. People were trying to comfort her, but she kept saying you were being manipulated and she was scared you'd never speak to them again. Oh, and she said the wedding might not be real, that it's all a stunt to hurt Tyler." I didn't even know how to respond to that. She said, "What?" Haley asked, staring at me. "That the wedding might not be real." Haley raised an eyebrow. "So what, I'm fake now?" I sighed. "Apparently you're an illusion created to traumatize my family." She snorted. "Well, I am quite dramatic. Maybe I should wear a red gown and arrive in a cloud of smoke." It would have been funny if it didn't sting so much. They were rewriting the narrative in real time, warping facts until they could see themselves as victims. I could practically hear my mom's voice in my head, explaining to a room full of sympathetic neighbors how her son had gone off the deep end and was under the influence of a woman who never really fit into the family. What they didn't know was that every time they said something like that, every time they played the martyr or twisted the truth, they were giving me more fuel. And then came the voicemail. I hadn't spoken to my father since the doorstep argument. He'd been quiet, eerily so. But 2 weeks after the cease and desist, his number popped up on my phone. I didn't answer. He left a message. "Mark, look, I don't agree with how your mother's been handling things or your brother, but you've escalated this into something ugly. Lawyers, legal threats. You know that's not how family handles things. If you go through with this wedding without us there, you're cutting ties. You understand that, right? There won't be a way back." There it was. The unspoken threat made spoken. I replayed it 3 times. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to remember the tone, that tight, controlled disappointment, the same voice he'd used when I told him I wanted to be a writer instead of joining his accounting firm. When I didn't attend Tyler's 3rd graduation ceremony because I had surgery. When I said no to co-signing a second loan for Tyler's branding agency, he thought this was just another phase I'd apologize for later. It wasn't. A week out from the wedding, Haley and I had final fittings for our outfits. Her dress was stunning, simple, elegant, not flashy. She didn't cry when she saw herself in it. She didn't gasp or get breathless like they show in movies. She just smiled small and certain and said, "Yeah, this is the one." That night, while we ate takeout on the floor of our half-furnished living room, I checked my email. One unread message. Subject: From your brother, a final attempt. Against my better judgment, I opened it. It was longer than I expected. No insults, no yelling, just a paragraph that read, "I don't know what's happening to you. I don't get why you'd throw away everything over a wedding, but I talked to mom and dad and they're saying they're not coming. I think that's wrong. You shouldn't have to choose. If you want, I'll talk to them. Just let me come. Just don't shut me out too." It should have felt like a peace offering, but something about it felt off. Too clean, too rehearsed, like he wrote it after someone told him to try one last time. Haley leaned over my shoulder as I reread it. "He didn't apologize," she said quietly. "No," I replied. "He didn't." And then like clockwork came the second email. This one wasn't from Tyler. It was from the Vineyard. Subject: urgent, unauthorized guest list access attempt. Apparently, someone called again this time, asking to add people back onto the guest list using my name. They'd asked about table placements, if the original head table seating with family could be restored, and even mentioned special dietary restrictions for the groom's mother. They'd used Tyler's phone number. I closed my laptop and sat in stunned silence for a moment until Haley broke it with a quiet, "They still think they can sneak their way back in." "No," I said, standing. "They think this is a negotiation." I picked up my phone and I called Dana. Dana didn't hesitate. After I explained everything, the latest impersonation attempt, the cryptic emails, the voicemail from my father, she asked for a timeline, receipts, and screenshots. Within hours, she sent over a formal warning addressed to Tyler, advising him that any further interference would result in legal action for identity misrepresentation and attempted contract manipulation. She also attached a list of rights Haley and I had as clients of the venue, including the right to press charges if someone attempted to impersonate us again. By now, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. Just done. Fully, finally done. They'd show me who they were at every turn. The desperation, the manipulation, the lack of basic decency. But more than that, the assumption that I would always bend, always fold, always apologize for making them uncomfortable with my boundaries. They didn't realize they'd broken the last piece of leverage they had the second they tried to hijack our guest list. The morning of the wedding, I woke up at 6 a.m. Haley was still asleep, curled under a blanket in the guest room of the Vineyard suite. I slipped outside onto the little patio that overlooked the rows of grapevines. The sky was soft pink, the grass still damp with dew. I felt calm, lighter than I'd felt in years. The ceremony was perfect, intimate, warm. Every chair filled with people who wanted to be there, people who supported us, cheered for us, laughed, and cried with us. Haley looked radiant, not just in the dress, but in the way she carried herself. She'd seen me at my worst, and she was still here. We were still here. The efficient and old college professor of mine delivered a short, thoughtful speech about love being a choice, not a performance. I caught myself glancing at the rows of empty chairs that had once been reserved for my parents, my brother, and half a dozen aunts and uncles. At first, those gaps had terrified me. Now they felt like breathing room. After the ceremony, the celebration kicked off. There was laughter, champagne dancing, no awkward small talk, no forced smiles. My best man made a joke during his toast about Haley having a lot of patience to marry a guy who once called her bro on a first date. People roared. Then, because poetic timing is apparently real, my phone buzzed during the dessert hour. A new voicemail from my mother. I didn't play it right away. I waited until the evening when the music slowed and the stars came out. Haley and I were tucked under the gazebo, catching our breath between songs. I showed her the notification. "Play it," she said. "Let's hear the final act. I put it on speaker." Her voice cracked the moment it started. "Mark, I just wanted to say that today should have been different. I thought you'd come to your senses. I thought you'd miss us, but instead you shut us out like strangers. I don't know what she did to you, but this isn't the son I raised." There it was, still blaming Haley, still framing herself as the victim. She continued, "I don't know if we'll ever speak again. But if you ever do want to rebuild this family, it starts with an apology." Click. I stared at the phone for a long moment. Was that her idea of peace? Haley asked dryly. No, I said that was her idea of power. I deleted the message. The next morning, we drove off to our honeymoon cabin in the mountains. No reception, no emails, no headlines, just us and the quiet and the kind of peace that only comes from finally letting go of people who never actually loved you. Just the version of you they could control. 3 weeks later, we returned home to a mailbox stuffed with envelopes. Most were wedding cards, sweet notes, gift receipts. One was from an aunt who'd quietly declined to pick sides but had watched everything from a distance. Inside was a short letter. Mark, I know you think we all sided with your parents. Some of us didn't. We just stayed quiet because we were scared. But watching you stand your ground, it made me wish I'd done the same years ago. You didn't lose a family. You uncovered who they were. Congratulations on everything, Aunt Janice. I pinned that letter to the corkboard above my desk. It became my reminder that sometimes drawing a boundary doesn't divide a family, it reveals it. And that choosing peace over performance is always worth it. Even when it cost you the illusion of togetherness, Tyler sent one last email about a month after the wedding. No subject line, just a paragraph. You could have had us there. You could have fixed it, but you chose her. Hope you're happy. I didn't reply because I was happy. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation for that. I hadn't lost anything. I'd gained something I never had before. Freedom, peace, and the right to live my life without apologizing for it.